Welcome to the first E3 book remix episode. You're probably wondering, what the heck is a book remix? I created this podcast and am currently building my consulting firm, the Empathy Collective, on the premise that if we are collectively empathetic as leaders, we will make a much bigger impact on society than if we each pursue our own individual ambitions in silos. So, in the spirit of we are all better together, I decided to create a series of episodes where I reflect on two books I've read and how collectively the two authors' arguments can make a big impact in the workplace. You are probably most familiar with the term remix in the music world, where the talents of two great artists are combined to form a new song. But the concept of remixing in literature exists as well. According to Wikipedia, a remix in literature is an alternative version of a text. The books I'm going to remix today are Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman and Hope for Cynics by Dr. Jamil Zaki. What happens when you combine truly human leadership with hope? You get leaders who treat their employees like their precious children while giving them a vision for their future that ignites inspiration and hope. If I decided to write a remix of these two books, I would title it Truly Human Leadership: The Power of Hope and Human Goodness. Now let's imagine Bob Chapman and Dr. Jamil Zaki join me on this podcast for a virtual coffee chat on human goodness in the workplace. Bob is the CEO at Barry-Wehmiller, which is a global supplier of manufacturing technology based in the US. He is also a strong believer in taking care of his employees like family. Dr. Zaki is a psychology professor at Stanford University and the director of the Stanford Social Neuroscience Lab. He and his colleagues study human connection and how people can learn to connect better. Dr. Zaki explores the science behind human goodness, and Bob Chapman implements this science in his daily work. I'll start the conversation with the employee wellness crisis happening in the workplace right now. Gallup recently released a report that indicates that employee well-being and mental health are at an all-time low. In Bob Chapman's book, he warns that the healthcare crisis is a crisis of caring. He goes on to say that the rate of heart attacks goes up 20% on Monday mornings, and that our work is literally killing us. Caring starts with leadership. At his company, their vision for team member health is living well, thriving together. In his words, we inspire our team members to make healthy lifestyle choices so we can all live well and thrive together. Our airwaves are filled with gratitude, appreciation, and recognition. Our organization is thriving because people know and can feel we truly care about them. Bob's company has built an entire leadership institute that coaches leaders on how to be good stewards of all the lives we touch in this world. Interestingly, many of his people who take Barry-Wehmiller's leadership courses mention that the courses not only help them be better leaders, but it also positively affects their family life. When you take in the principles of truly human leadership, you become a better human overall. So once we've addressed employee mental health, how do we enact sustainable change in the workplace? In Dr. Zaki's recently published book, Hope for Cynics, he talks about enacting change in social movements. In 2022, researchers reviewed the science of collective actions such as protests and boycotts. These researchers discovered that two emotional forces drive collective action: righteous anger at injustice and efficacy, or when they sense that they can do something about it. By bringing these two concepts together in a productive way, it will help us find a common purpose with others and strengthen our connection. One of my biggest discoveries leading change management for a major organizational restructuring was the powerful impact of employee recognition and celebrating employees who are making a true impact on customers. I love the story Bob tells about the importance of recognition and celebration at his company. One of the items in Barry-Wehmiller's leadership checklist is, I recognize and celebrate the greatness in others. They have a Guiding Principles of Leadership SSR award that was born after Bob had dinner with one of his leaders at their Phillips, Wisconsin site back in 2005. She said, "You know, Mr. Chapman, you come up and give these speeches that are inspiring to us all, but then you leave and we kind of gravitate back to management instead of leadership." Do you have any ideas on what we could do to sustain and deepen our commitment to these ideals? Bob thought about the yellow Chevrolet SSR he owned and said, "Why don't I ship the car up to this site? You can put it outside the plant, have people nominate their colleagues for their goodness, and then have a committee of their peers pick the winner. We'll surprise them with the car, which they can drive around for a week, and everyone who sees them will know that they have been recognized for their goodness." This became one of the most successful initiatives at the company and still is wildly popular to this day. What Bob is teaching his leaders is that it's important to award and recognize people for doing something that supports the company's values and not just for work that positively impacts the bottom line. So we've discussed how leaders can support employee well-being and recognize people for role modeling the company's culture and values. Now let's talk about how the principles in these two books support the foundation of good leadership. Although neither author references Gallup's 4 needs of followers, the arguments in their books support all 4 pillars. Those pillars are trust, compassion, stability, and hope. Building trust is the foundation of good leadership, while compassion brings positive energy and the willingness to listen to individuals on your team. Bob Chapman's truly human leadership concept is centered around compassion. Stability creates reassurance that people can count on you, and hope, the premise of Dr. Zaki's book, encourages people to believe in a better future. Dr. Zaki coins the term hopeful skepticism as we seek to understand others better and create a world where we believe in the power of human virtue. Dr. Zaki also references a researcher, Dr. Andreas Leibrandt, who was studying how organizations shape employees through pre-existing conditions. During his studies, he visited a lakeside village in northeastern Brazil. The men worked in a very solitary way. They went out at 3 a.m. to set their nets and spent the day alone in small boats. Fishermen only saw each other when boats vied for the best spots. The lake was a cutthroat, lonely workplace. Then he traveled 40 miles away from this village to a second fishing village, which was so much friendlier than the first. Why? It was an ocean fishing village that required large boats and heavy equipment. This promoted teamwork, and the villagers had to cooperate in order to succeed. Think about where you work currently. Are the pre-existing conditions of your work environment preventing you from collaborating in a productive way? Bob Chapman mentions a specific example in his book where pre-existing conditions on the manufacturing floor negatively impacted employee engagement. One of his factory employees noted that office workers could pick up a phone and make a personal call whenever they needed to, while people in the factory had to wait for an official break and use a payphone. Making changes to small environmental issues like this can make a huge impact on employee morale. Last but definitely not least, Dr. Zaki and Bob Chapman both reinforce building workplace cultures centered around trust. Just like hope, this is one of the 4 needs of followers identified by Gallup, and a critical one. Dr. Zaki references the Microsoft culture during the Steve Ballmer days, where rank and yank was the theme. Every 6 months, managers drew the blinds on conference rooms and arranged Post-it notes on a whiteboard to decide their employees' fates. Dr. Zaki goes on to explain how cynical organizations are more burned out and less satisfied with their jobs. As you reflect on today's remix and your own leadership style, think about how you are instilling the 4 needs of followers into your business's culture. Are you great with compassion, but less so with hope? Have you mastered trust, but need to do some more work on stability? Have you established internal KPIs or key performance indicators that measure the way you touch the lives of people, or are you only measuring bottom line impact? That's all I have for today. I hope I gave you some food for thought. Let me know what you think of the E3 book remix series. I always love to hear from you and welcome your feedback. You can send me an email at rebecca.dhrimaj@theempathycollective.com, or you can also reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. If you would like to see Bob Chapman or Dr. Jamil Zaki on this podcast, feel free to share this episode with your social media networks and use the hashtag E3 book remix. All right, that's it. I wish you a wonderful day.